Hey folks, Matt from Avid here, and this is the Eventide H90. The H90 is Eventide's flagship effects pedal, and it was of course the inspiration behind the H90 drum sample pack now on the Sonic Drop. My journey with Eventide started maybe 25 years ago. The first time I ever heard it was on a Steve Vai record from the 90s, and it just blew my mind. Later, I got to use a DSP 4000 when I was at Berklee College of Music, and we took a Moog Theremin and piped it through an algorithm in a DSP 4000 called Genesis Worlds, which essentially was a pitch shifter, both high and low, going to a massive cavernous reverb. And it just turned a theremin into this gigantic orchestral swell. Needless to say, I was hooked. A few years later, I was able to get a DSP 4000 secondhand of my own, and it was such an integral part of my workflow for about 15 years. And I actually use the H90 exactly the same way I used to use the DSP 4000, but now with some improvements. I don't use it as a pedal on the floor, it lives in my rack, and I use the software editor H90 Control to actually control everything synced to Pro Tools, of course. So I'm going to show you some of the ways I use the H90 to make the drums in the H90 sample pack. And also I should mention, many of the algorithms within the H90 also do exist as effects plugins you can use in Pro Tools. However, there are of course exclusive algorithms within the H90 that are not going to be in plugin form. That is part of the magic of the hardware, and if you're into hardware, you should totally check this thing out. It's really inspirational. So lastly, I just want to thank Eventide for collaborating with us on this. They have made such inspiring tools really for my entire career and long before I was even alive, truthfully. And that being said, give them a look. They're amazing, and let's dive right in. So here we are in Pro Tools, and here are some of the ways I made the H90 drums. So first of all, I'm going to start with a simple pattern. This is coming out of an Electron Syntact, and it sounds like this. So that's it. And I want to send some delays to it because I made a very sparse pattern, and the reason for that is because I actually want the delays to kind of fill in all the rhythmic gaps. So the first thing you want to do is go to Setup, go to MIDI, and check MIDI beat clock. And then make sure you're sending beat clock to the H90 pedal. That is going to clock the H90 to Pro Tools. So that's already set. So I'm just going to keep this playing, and I'm going to start playing with the parameters in the H90. This is the H90 control. This is Eventide's application that you can actually control the H90 remotely. So my H90 is actually sitting in my rack over there. I'm not going to touch it once. I'm purely going to control everything through the app right here. So I'm going to hit the loop, and let's start playing. So let's add a delay. So I'm going to go to Preset Library, Delay, and I'm going to choose Filter Pong because that's one of my favorite Eventide algorithms. And I'm just going to choose a random preset. We're going to play with it. So this preset starts with triplets. That's a bit much. Let's do dotted eighths. So it's in sync, but let's make it filtery. So turn up the filter, turn up mod depth, maybe even turn up the feedback a little. And we can make the modulation speed a lot faster as well if we wanted. Pretty cool. I'm gonna stick with one though, I like the slower one. So now I want to add some distortion to this, just really like crunch it up a little bit. So with H90, I can actually switch the algorithm, and now it's actually the first algorithm in the chain, and I can add something to the second algorithm. So back to my preset library, this algorithm is selected, and I'm going to choose distortion, and I'm going to choose Weed Whacker, because Weed Whacker is a fun new algorithm. It's gritty. So let's turn down the drive a bit. Still has some color though. Maybe turn down the mix a touch. Turn up the tone. Let's make it totally wet. Delay too. Turn up the mids a touch. Now let's bring the delay back in, or the dry signal. And maybe the mix of the Weed Whacker down too. So that's pretty cool sounding, right? So now I want to record that in, so I have my loop. And because I want to keep the delay tails in the loop itself, I'm just going to double the length of it. And I'm just going to hit record. Cool tail at the end too. Now let's just cut it up. So here is our kick right there. That's where the loop starts. Get rid of the other stuff. And as cool as that tail is, I don't want it. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a fade at the end. And now here's our loop. Pretty cool, right? And the thing you have to remember, this was the original loop. So from that to this. Super cool. Now let's take the H90 to process a clap and make it really stereo. So once again, I'm using the Syntect, and I'm just gonna bypass or go to a new initialized program on the H90. And this is our loop, or this is just, I should say, this is our clap. Just your basic synthesized clap, nothing crazy about it at all. But let's make it a lot wider. So I'm going to keep this looping and go to the H90. So first thing I want to add is some pitch shifting, and I'm going to do it with micro pitch, which is going to spread it super wide. So I go to pitch shift, go to micro pitch, and just start with, let's say, H3000 micro pitch. And you can already see it just spread it super far left and right. The right channel is actually being delayed by about 25 milliseconds, as you can see. And both channels are being pitched up and down by 9 cents, respectively. So we could really, if we want to, push it further. Say minus 50 and up 50. But when you do that, it starts to get a little too far apart. And in this case, the left channel is taking control over the right. So I'm going to keep it down lower. And maybe shorten the delay just a touch. That sounds pretty great to me right there. Now, let's add something else to make it a little bit more special. So let's go to our preset library again. For this algorithm, we're going to choose, let's do a different kind of distortion. Let's do Crush Station. Let's try Crawdaddy, why not? So that darkens it up a ton, right? Let's bring the treble back up. But it has a nice, real like destruction to the end of it. Let's turn on the drive a bit. And turn down this post distortion. And let's also, they have some pitch shifting here as well in Crush Station, so let's add some of that in. Cool. Let's turn post distortion down a bit more. Let's turn up grit. Maybe that's a bit much. Turn it down again, and let's turn down our mix a bit. So now we have that crunch in there. And our output gain is pretty low because of the processing, so let's just turn it back up. And that's that. So let's track that in. And once again, we'll track both because there's a slight discrepancy every time a clap hits, both in actually the synthesis of the clap, but also in the micro pitch. So that sounds great. Let's also clean that up just a touch real quick. And do the same thing on the second. And just a fade at the very end. And we now have our claps. Cool. So for the last one, I have a different drum loop. And let's clean out our H90 again. So init program. And this sounds like this. And on this, I want to use a new algorithm called polyphony, which is one of the brand new algorithms in the H90. And it's a pretty high-tech version of pitch shifting. So let's keep this looping. And let's go to preset library, choose this slot, go to pitch, and choose polyphony. You can already hear it's doing quite a bit. So I'm gonna what we're doing right now is we're pitch shifting one side up by an octave and the other down by an octave. And we can pan both pitch shifters left and right. Pretty cool. And let's change the instrument type to percussive. So fully wet. Let's play with the pitch shifting. So now we're pitching both up by a fifth, but there's also the delay. So we can actually delay the pitch shifted notes. So first, let's sync it to tempo, because right now we are in milliseconds and seconds. So we go to general, and here in tempo mode, we turn it to on. And then, now we're just back in here, and let's play. Maybe let's make this a quarter. Now turn down the mix. Actually, I'm gonna stick it to dotted eighth also. Or maybe an eighth note. That's pretty cool. I like that. Let's try pitching them down. Turn up the mix. That's a cool loop on its own right there. So let's add some modulation to it. So let's go to another preset, and this time we're gonna use a phaser. So we go to modulation and choose phaser. And let's just choose 8 talk about phase, why not? And let's choose a different type. I like this one. Let's turn up the speed. You can get pretty extreme. So that's a bit much, right? And you could actually tempo sync the phaser too. So maybe let's make it quarters. Or actually, let's make it a full bar. And now bring down the intensity. And now let's bring back in the original mix. That's really cool. That's really busy, but it's very cool. And the other thing we could do, we could actually keep the mix entirely of polyphony all the way up and just turn the master mix all the way down. And just to hear what it would be like without the hi-hat, let's just take it out. And that's actually a bit better, I think. But we could also create a hi-hat pattern out of this if we wanted, and we could just mute the other stuff. And that actually works pretty well too. Let's add another hit in there. I mean, that's synth, but let's find an actual hit. And now let's bring the mix back in. And that's a cool top loop. So you can see there's so many ways that you just keep experimenting. It gets really creative. It's really like, you have to get lost in the wormhole a bit. And just for fun, there is an algorithm called Wormhole. And I'll show you exactly what it sounds like right now. It's a reverb. Introducing Wormhole. Sounds like you're in a wormhole. And it goes on for a very long time. Still going. Still going. Still going, slightly. Mostly fading out. That's Wormhole for you. So lastly, I thought you might be wondering what these drums now sound like all layered together. And it's pretty awesome. Check it out. And that's why I love Eventide stuff. It just really takes often like very mundane things and turns them into something incredible and exquisite. So first, go and download the H90 drum sample pack from Avid link under the new Sonic Drop tab. But also, take a bunch of these into your sessions, start layering them up, take a few loops together, take some one-shots. It all sounds really cool, and it's massive and wide and unique and very hi-fi, science-y, like science fiction alien sounding at times, and it's a lot of fun. So this is the H90 drums. We did it in collaboration with Eventide. Go give it a look. It's awesome.